Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been staying safe. Today's true crime story is a mystery that is unraveling in Ghana, my own country in West Africa. And it's about the mysterious death of the CEO of two institutions. The first being Kiki B's restaurant here in Accra, and the second being Noir Lounge, also in Accra. Now, this CEO is none other than the person called Mr. Bennett Ejekum Adoma. Now, the video you watched prior to the commencement of this was him arriving in the country from the Netherlands. So, he traveled outside of Ghana to the Netherlands about 3 months ago, and he arrived back in Ghana on the 7th of November 2023. It seems like all was well. According to reports, he didn't even inform anybody that he was coming down to Ghana. So it seemed more like a surprise of a sort. Now, when he arrived in Ghana, he went to his residence around 6 p.m. of the same day. He met his wife, he saw his kids, and everybody was happy. And I think that if you are a kid in such a situation, to have your daddy arrive out of the blue like that, it has a warm feeling to it that sort of makes your day, especially when he comes bearing gifts and there's that happiness with his arrival. So that seems like the atmosphere, and everything looked beautiful and nice. Also, people thought, because fast forward, on the evening of the same day that he arrived, he would later go to one of his establishments by name Kiki B's restaurant. Now, the Kiki B's restaurant is a lounge and a restaurant situated at Medina, which is a suburb of Accra. And he was there. He made a live video of himself sitting there, hanging out and chilling, taking some drinks and all. And in the course of that video, he made a cryptic post. With what he said, he was basically saying that if God was to be a man, then people like him would have been issued an execution order. This was what he sent on that live video, which was just some few hours before midnight. Now, fast forward, he will be found deceased under very mysterious circumstances in a woman's apartment. Mind you, he is married with kids, but the woman in whose apartment he was found deceased was not his wife. So questions started coming in. Initially, there was a report alleging that Mr. Bennett Ejekum Adoma, CEO of Kiki B's restaurant and Noir Lounge, had actually been assassinated by some business owners or some business moguls that he had engaged in a sort of snitching on, or had engaged in a sort of forceful financial transactions with. And the cause of death, according to the allegation at the time, was that he had been shot. Now, as the news unraveled, I was also researching, and it turns out that he was not shot, but instead, he had actually been stabbed. As to what he was stabbed with, I'm still waiting on the police to determine. But the other question was, why was he even stabbed? Who stabbed him? And who is the woman in whose apartment he was found deceased in? These were the key questions. And it would come out later that the woman in whose apartment he was found deceased was a woman by name Miss Mam Yan de Juve. She is a woman who has been alleged to be his girlfriend, or some would say his side chick. So the story begins to take a turn where it's now coming out that this CEO, who has a wife and lovely kids whom he took a video of when he arrived in Ghana, has actually also been having a side chick relationship on the side. Okay, even with that, the next question is, how then does he end up deceased in this side chick's apartment? Now, the police came in and they brought a fact sheet of what they had found per their investigations. And this is what they are saying. According to the police fact sheets, they are saying that Mr. Bennett Ejekum Adoma went to see his side chick in the person of Mam Yandi Juve, and in the course of he being there, he was under the influence of some drugs and he started acting harshly and sort of trashing the place, and eventually he injured himself, inflicted that stab wound on himself in the process, and lost his life as a result. So in conclusion, their fact sheet is sort of trying to say that he took his own life, but maybe accidentally, sort of. Now, mind you, an autopsy had not yet been done at this point. So the question I had was, how were they able to determine all this? Is it something that they were able to determine on site there and then? Because this was the first time they had gone there. So in the absence of an autopsy, how do you even determine that he was under the influence of a drug or something? Unless there's something else they are not telling us. But all this was adding to the mystery of the case, and it was bringing up very, very valid questions. So this was what they said. And based on this, although the side chick in the person of Mam Yandi Juve had been arrested and was being treated as the key suspect, her lawyer had now found grounds to actually say that she is innocent, because even the police fact sheet seems to technically exonerate her. She just happened to be in her own apartment when Mr. Bennett came, and one thing led to the other. He was under the influence of a drug, he got chaotic, and he lost his life in the process, but not at the hands of the side chick. So it seemed like this would have been an open and shut case. But then, as you would expect, in a case of a side chick and a married man being deceased, there was another twist. An audio was leaked. Now, in this audio, the conspiracy began to grow, because in the audio, you would hear a lady's voice alleged to be that of the key suspect and the side chick, Mam Yandi Juve, talking with another person by name Roy, who was later identified or alleged to be a close friend of the deceased, Mr. Benedict Ejekum Adoma, and his family. So in this audio, is depicting that this side chick was talking to this guy called Roy, and she was telling him that the man, Mr. Bennett, was at her residence and he was getting frantic. You could actually hear him in the background making noise and yelling at her that she's an evil woman and asking why she did this to him. Still in this audio, you hear her telling the Roy guy that he should hurry up and come because he is getting out of hand, sort of. And Roy also tells her that he's on his way coming. And he keeps telling her he's driving, he has gotten to this point, he's taking this left turn, he has gotten to this landmark, he's on his way, he's coming, just keep calm, he's coming. And the conversation goes on from there. Now, at a point, you hear the deceased, Mr. Bennett, asking for the keys. And you also hear the side chick telling him that she can't find the keys, only to whisper to Roy after that she has the keys, but she just doesn't want to give it to the deceased. All this goes on, and by the time the Roy guy got there, the man had lost his life. Now, with this, for me, it raises more questions. One, what key was the deceased looking for? Because it's good to note that his car, a Range Rover, was not parked on the compound of the side chick's apartment. He had parked it outside of the compound. And I think that means that it's not likely he was going to sleep over. Because if he was going to sleep over, he would have parked it within the compound. Two, what key was he looking for? Is it the key to get out of the apartment because something was happening? Or is it his car key or something else? And why would the lady, his side chick, tell him that she can't find the key, but that she's looking for the key, only to whisper to the Roy on phone that she has the key and she just doesn't want to give it to him? Why? I don't get it. Which key was it? And then, 3, why was the deceased also shouting at her that she's an evil woman and telling her how could she have done this to him? What did she do to him in the first place? What did she do to him in the first place? That is something that I think also needs to be looked into. And then finally, in that short space of time between when the guy was on the phone with the side chick and we could hear the man in the background shouting, in that short space of time, the few minutes that would be left for the Roy to get to the house and enter the premises, what transpired such that the man ended up dead? There's something in there that I think the police would have to dig further into. So, this case is still ongoing and it seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. As it stands now, the deceased has been deposited at the mortuary and his family has agreed that an autopsy should be conducted. And I think it's in its right place because we can't just go with that fact sheet that the police gave out. I think that might be their preliminary action or preliminary findings, and maybe some things may have informed their preliminary perception or findings or facts. But I think that the autopsy report would be, or the autopsy would be the best thing to show the actual cause of death. And I'm waiting to see what that finding will be. As it stands now, the side chick, Yandi Juf, is still in police custody. She's set to reappear before court and she's being charged with the murder of the CEO of Kiki Bees and Noir Lounge, Mr. Bennett Ajekumadoma. Now, there's also a saying that dead men don't tell any tales. Who is going to speak for him? They were the only 2 people in that room and he turned up dead. The third person who may come into the conversation might be Roy, who was actually driving and could hear some of the things in the background. He actually went on to ask the lady that, why is the deceased telling you that you set him up? What did you do? Now, I'm no judge and I'm not trying to preempt the outcome of this case, but my instincts tell me that this case has a lot of things to it. So much is going to come out of this case if investigations are thorough. I believe it is not as straightforward as something went haywire when he was under the influence and he just harmed himself. I believe that, or I suspect that there is more to this between the side chick and the man, and maybe even Roy. Because my question is, why did she have to wait for Roy to get to the house? It's an apartment with other residents. So she even said in the audio that other residents have come out and are watching because of how the man was yelling and making noise. So if it was about you needing help, you could actually have called out to these residents for them to come. You could have opened the door to seek help. You could have screamed for people to come in. But it seemed like she wanted to control something about the situation, especially since she was holding on to a key that she was actually telling the man that she was looking for. So a lot doesn't add up. Why did it necessarily have to be Roy? It's established that Roy had a personal relationship with the deceased and his family, but in an emergency, why should it necessarily be him when he is nowhere near the location that the scene is playing out at, when there are readily tenants and other third parties on site who can give immediate help? So there could be a conspiracy there, or there might be nothing, but I think that there is more to this case, and I'm waiting to see how this would play out. In all this, the unfortunate bit is that some people are also trying to throw a shade at the widow of Mr. Bennett Ejekum Adoma, talking about the fact that in the video that he shot when he came from Amsterdam and went home, his wife didn't seem excited to see him. And so maybe she drove him into the arms of a side chick. That I find very stupid for anybody to say. You know, marriage has its ups and downs, but I don't think, even if it seems she wasn't happy to see him, it is an excuse for him to go into the arms of his side chick. There are people who are also trying to blame him that if he had stuck to his vows, he would have been alive, because there wouldn't have been a side chick and he wouldn't have had to go to her apartment and fall victim to whatever he fell victim to. In hindsight, that is easy to say, although I don't condone him having a side chick in the first place. I'm just saying that sometimes when the thing has already played out, it's easier for you to come in and add such statements. All in all, my heart goes out to his family, his wife, his kids, and other loved people that he was connected to and people who cared about him. I pray they have the strength to go through this difficult time. And if the side chick is innocent, I hope that is also established, because readily she looks like a suspect. Readily she looks like the key suspect. But there could be something more to this. There's a similar case that has also transpired some previous months ago, also under similar circumstances. I'm trying to get all the facts on that case so I can cover it. That is even still in court, where also a Ghanaian man came from Canada with his wife and kids, but then took some time off to go and see his side chick and was found dead in his side chick's apartment. So with some of these occurrences, I'm suspecting that there are other things going on behind the scenes, influencing how some of these outcomes do come about, and we on the outside get to hear cases like this. I think that there are deeper workings to these cases, and I'm hoping the police can unravel it. But for now, rest in peace to Mr. Bennett Ejekum Adoma, and keeping my fingers crossed to see the extent of the investigations and whether suspects will be found in addition to the current primary suspect, and whether the prosecution will be successful in being able to prosecute somebody or a group of people for the untimely demise of Mr. Bennett Ejekum Adoma. Was it a suicide or murder? We are waiting to see. Until then, just subscribe to the channel if you are yet to do so, and hit the notification button. Check out my other YouTube channel about my country, Ghana. If you are yet to know anything about my country, just go to the description and you will see the link to the other channel. Keep an eye out, stay safe out there, and I'll catch you next time.